I apologize for the show that is about to happen. I am so underprepared for this. We borderline should cancel it. I don't think I've been this underprepared for even Time Comic Bros. It's going to be bad.
Such is life. Welcome back to the Dime Gaming Bros podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Spencer. I am joined by Jacob.
I'm too busy rubbing my eyes. I'm tired.
No, he's so tired.
I am sleepy boy.
It's like 5 p.m. there.
And I've been waking up at 3:40 this week.
Oof.
3:40 in the morning.
Oof.
I'm used to waking up at noon to go to work.
Yucky. So Jacob is on a work trip right now. So this episode is a bit all over the place, but we're gonna make it work. So
I literally have to compensate having nothing to talk about with retarded Colin energy.
That's fair. To be fair, he was 2 hours late today, so that was cool.
Owie. That's not fair to him though. It snowed like 5 feet back home. So
we Zoom called. He didn't wake up until noon.
He has no excuse then.
No, his excuse was that his alarms all weren't working because iPhone got a new update or something, and he still dipped out pretty quickly, even though he couldn't leave. So that was cool. Yeah, I was all set and ready to go. I got up early to make sure I was good, and then sat there waiting. Called every like 5 minutes.
It sounds like a good reason not to use an iPhone.
Yeah, you would think, but you'll never learn that lesson for some reason.
We're here to talk about video games and video game movies and video game news and anything game related.
And breast milk at Activision Blizzard.
You love to bring that one up.
Yes, I do.
Xbox bought the Blizzard Activision breast milk. If you really think about it.
You know, the fact that that's the most outrageous thing that happened out of that whole situation, like actual crimes were committed, genuinely horrible things, and we don't really blink because it's just so normalized in large companies. But then the weird thing that some random person stole breast milk out of a fridge is it sticks.
Maybe it just goes well with cereal.
I don't want to find out that. So what do you have for me, buddy? Because I feel like this is going to be an easier way to roll than I ramble for ages and then you tidy up at the end. What have you got going on? Oh, I know.
All right. I went back in time and I found a shitty movie that I hope we will never have to review on this show because it's so far back in time. It is, see if you can guess it. It is a movie based on a video game about a fighting championship where representatives from different places come together and fight each other, and the last one standing wins life and freedom and stuff for
so I think the obvious
their universe.
The implication is Mortal Kombat, which means it's not. I'm gonna take a stab and say it's like a Street Fighter movie I've never heard of.
It is a Tekken one that you've never heard of.
Oh, Tekken.
It came out in 2010. It's rated R.
Ooh.
We follow this guy called Jin Kazama. It's spelled Jin, not like the alcohol, but it's very confusing when other characters just yell Jin all the time. Sounds like my life most nights. Anyway, Jin, picture like Demolition Man, right? It's the end of the world and corporations have taken over the world, and there's 8 corporations that represent nations, basically. There's 8 different nations.
So current year, got it.
Run by Walmart. And Jin is kind of a pirate guy that runs the stuff for the black market, and he's selling stuff, trying to take down the man. And bad guys kill his mom because reasons. And she spent most of his life training him to be a great fighter, one of like the best fighter. But she doesn't want him to participate in the fighting event that saves the universe or something. But because she dies, he says, well, I know what I'm going to do. And he fights in the great fight that saves the universe or something. He meets a bunch of strange characters, but they're not cool at all. They all look like normal humans, and that was really boring. They have somewhat unique costumes, and that was okay. It was very, very one-sided, let's say, in the costume department. The female characters have very spicy costumes, and the guys have like 90s or 2000s flames on their shorts.
I've always wanted to fight as Guy Fieri.
um, what's the name of the guy? There's a guy in Tekken. Hold the phone.
Nope.
I don't remember his name. You would recognize him as soon as you see him. He's the old guy with the white hair that's like winged out, kind of like Wolverine's hat. And the costuming or makeup, I guess, worked. The costuming department or makeup department worked really, really hard to make his hair look cool like it does in the game, and that was decent. But literally everybody else is just a normal person, which kind of sucks because I remember Tekken as being like the game with the jaguar guy or the bear that is wrestling the kung fu guy, or like really crazy characters. So that was disappointing. There's the old guy and his son, and his son kind of looks like a vampire, but he isn't. And he's the bad guy. And there's a lot of talk about why he's a bad guy. And I kind of didn't really care. There's a lot of talk. It was literally like fight and dialogue dump, and then fight and then dialogue dump. And the fights weren't really great because it was a lot of 2 or 3 second cuts of action, like one punch, and then it would cut to the crowd, and it was like the same B footage of the crowd. I want to say a legit third of the movie is just B footage of crowds watching the fight that saves the universe or whatever. Like there's people in Times Square or something similar. There's people in bars that we haven't met. We just follow this one crowd in a bar that's cheering for the good guy because he's the chosen one. There's a lot of exploitation of the costuming that just feels really gross. It's rated R, and despite 2 quick shots and maybe a word or two, I would have sworn it was a PG-13 movie out of the 2000s. Like, I don't remember really anything that was like, oh, that's why this is rated R. I don't even remember any violence. Like, it should have been a PG-13 for all of the obvious reasons. You would attract more people, younger people that might be like, I'm going to go watch a shitty video game movie. And you get like that extra money. But because it's an R, you immediately lose money. So nothing about this makes sense.
Where does it fall in the hierarchy of bad video game movies? What is it next to?
I would say this is pretty low. I have a higher regard for the Resident Evil movies than you do. Uh, I would watch all 8 of those or 9 of those again before watching this. This is really low. It was, I almost gave up on it and just said that I couldn't finish it, but I didn't. Um, yeah, I have a much higher opinion of shitty video game movies than you do. I liked the Silent Hill ones for what they were. They're definitely shitty, but I kind of liked them for being a shitty movie.
I just need
There's,
to put in a catheter before I go watch those.
there's
Maybe this is
nothing here that I liked.
Yeah.
I don't. There wasn't a joke. There wasn't a line of dialogue that was delivered well. Like the guy playing Jin, I'm willing to bet has a language barrier that made his performance pretty stiff. All the jank. There might have been 1 or 2 quick shots in the fight that I was like, oh, that was actually kind of cool. That's it. That's all I got for a positive.
Yikes.
Maybe you can count as a positive. The lighting in most scenes felt like a shitty Next Generation episode. So maybe there's some nostalgia there, but I'd rather just watch Next Generation. Like,
Yeah,
I'm really trying here. Yeah, bad.
Not good.
Very bad.
Also, speaking of not good, you did not watch Monster Hunter, correct?
That's correct. I didn't get to it.
Okay. So I watched Monster Hunter, which came out in 2020. Written, directed, and
to be fair, I watched it when it came out. I rented it right when it hit the red box.
Ugh. It was written.
So that kind of helped me with being like, I don't want to spend money to rent this shitty movie again.
It's pretty rough. It was written, directed, and produced by Paul W.S. Anderson, the guy who makes most of the previous Resident Evil movies, and stars his wife, as do the previous Resident Evil movies. A bunch of soldiers get stuck in the Monster Hunter world, and they all die except the hot mommy. And then the hot mommy finds someone from the Monster Hunter world, and they team up for an hour, and then they find the other Monster Hunter people, and then the movie ends.
Sometimes there's monsters, but not really.
Yeah, so this thing is there's certain types of movies, I think, that fall kind of in this category more than just this one. Nobody working on this actually gave a shit about this franchise at all. I think they just wanted to make a movie with monsters in it that was an IP. Because Monster Hunter is already kind of a loose franchise from what I can tell. There isn't a lot of like continuity heavy stuff. It is just a lot of monster fighting in different like subgenres. I have barely looked into it.
I was going to say, how much have you played?
None.
None.
I've it's cultural osmosis.
So I did, when Monster Hunter World first came out, I probably put 40 hours into it. But because everybody said, there were all kinds of articles online that was like, if you like Destiny, which I did at the time, I loved it very much, and I was trying to quit that bad habit, they suggested playing Monster Hunter World. And I was like, all right, maybe this will be my nicotine patch. But it really wasn't. It's very, very simple in its design. You go outside and you kill monster, and you bring back consumables or crafting materials to build armor. And then you go back outside and you kill more monster, and you bring back crafting material, and you either upgrade your armor or you do a different set of armor that'll upgrade better eventually. And you just keep doing that, and eventually you are making builds for your character depending on buffs and debuffs and what you're trying to fight against, but it was extremely grindy, way more than Destiny, and it was not very easy. It felt like it should be a party game, like get a friend or two to help hunt monsters, and it, it was also kind of difficult to change weapons. It was like there's 15 weapons here. I don't know which one to choose. And I felt stuck with that choice. Maybe I was wrong, but I dipped out pretty quick. So that's my experience with Monster Hunter.
I have basically only just Google searched and seen announcements and stuff. So it just doesn't seem like there's a lot to the franchise, and that's fine. That's whatever. But this movie kind of has to make up stuff whole cloth, and it doesn't even do that really. The only stuff that seems to have anything to do with the pre-established world or characters is like 15 minutes in total. It's 5 at the beginning and 10 at the end, other than a single character who doesn't speak English for the whole movie. It feels like they just wanted to make a big monster movie, and then they said, we can get a very popular gaming franchise attached to this, and we'll just run with it. Because this thing...
I must admit that there is depth to the builds for your character between your weapon and your armor, but there's none of that in this movie. That like they shoot gun at monster.
Yeah. This is this movie honestly makes me feel kind of icky. It does a thing that I'm not a fan of. When going to some world, a different dimension world, whatever. A lot of books or comics, or a lot of anime does this. They will have a boring generic character go with you as like your self insert into the new crazy world. And this really just came across like, we need a white lady on the poster, because that's the vibe I got off of it. Was like, we need an American white person. It's like, well, one, she's not even American. Well, I think she has dual citizenship, but like, she is not like... Mila Jovovich is, I believe, Ukrainian. So like that, I don't know, man. It was just none of this feels earnest or careful at all. It just feels like we should put guns in it, and I will kind of treat the one person in this movie, I don't even remember his name, the one like native character, as like a noble savage, which is also a trope I really fucking hate. This feels really weird and kind of gross. Positives wise, Yolovich is fine. I have kind of come around on her performances. I have an appreciation for them. I don't think she's been in a good movie in a very long time, but I think if the role fits well, she can definitely be up to the task. And she does a lot of her own stunts here, blah blah blah, the usual shtick, which is fine.
I was pretty proud of when you texted me that she hasn't been in a good movie since '98, and I was like, Fifth Element was in '95, and you were like, yeah, that's the one. Like, I was kind of joking around because I didn't think you would like Fifth Element.
I really like Fifth Element.
Really?
Yes.
I
don't know how this movie got a budget. Ron Perlman has the most mailed in cameo on the planet at the end of the movie, and that's about it. There's a big kitty. I like the big kitty character, who's just a person but a cat. A bunch of this shit is like rip off Dune 100%. Like, it's a giant
Dune came out though.
Well, it rip off of the book. Like, it's a big dragon worm thing that goes in the sand, and if you rattle the sand the wrong way, it'll hear you. It's like, what the fuck is this shit? Like, the entire movie takes place in one setting, except for the last like 15 minutes, and then they rush through a finale with a big dragon that's barely been set up, and then they go to the real world, or back to our world, or whatever. It's so dumb.
I remember that too. It felt like it was all mostly on one set.
Yeah. The spider-like character, like monsters in the first half of the movie or so, I don't hate. Some of them have some kind of cool designs. There's some okay-ish sequences of action there. Um, there is one moment in this movie which I remember telling Jacob when I watched this in theaters when it came out. One of the soldiers gets like implanted with a bunch of eggs, and he lifts up his shirt to like show them bursting out of his side, and that was gnarly as fuck. Made me want to burn off my own skin, but that's about it. I don't even think the VFX are very good. The monsters look fine, and everything else is bland and lifeless. It's just yeah. It commits
Yep.
the worst of the two evils. It's not just bad; it's boring and bad.
Yep.
Um,
That was how Tekken felt. It's
yeah,
just like I'm bored to tears. Like there's nothing good. There's nothing enjoyable here.
yeah. Like just for recent comparison's sake, at least with something like Resident Evil, the TV show, most of it was bad, but it there was a sense of like kind of intrigue and hope for most of the runtime that it was going to do something interesting. I wasn't bored. I just knew it was going to be bad when it was over. Like it kind of
You
kept
weren't
my
mad, you were just disappointed.
yeah, like it was I knew it was going to be bad and I had a lot of complaints and I still have a lot of complaints. I'm sure as hell not going to watch it again, but like I didn't feel the need to scroll my phone while watching it, and that's a bad barometer for
Oh, I
stuff.
did.
I know you do, but you do that when we're watching movies in the fucking theater. So that's not a
That's not
barometer for
true.
you. Yeah, well,
That is
shut up.
not true.
You'll go on Reddit when
I
you're
gotta catch
watching a TV show. You'll
because
just
most TV shows are garbage.
you'll be watching Mandalorian and you'll go on your phone.
I don't
Yeah.
think so.
I just
I gotta
Was
catch Pokemons.
Resident Evil was boring. Halo was somewhere in the same camp of like boring.
Bad.
It was bad, but like there was a handful of things that were okay. I wasn't bored by it. It wasn't good,
Yeah.
but
Heretic sex.
yeah, at least there were like boobies. I don't know. Out of the recent, I don't know. There's nothing about this movie that I remembered watching it in the theater and I remembered everything about it, but none of it stood out. Like I could run the movie through my mind from beginning to end because it's an
Right.
hour and a half tops.
There's sand and they're talking. And then there's more sand and they're talking.
Yeah. I guess the only real standout is that she's wearing a tank top for most of the movie. That's a win. That's it.
You can look at the poster to get that though.
Wait. That is incorrect. Oh, that's an armored tank top. I mean, she was wearing like a wife beater for most of the movie.
She beats her own wife?
I would be willing to bet. Yeah, bad movie, bad and boring. Moving on.
Shall we hit the news then?
I want to hit myself.
I will hit you for you.
Ooh, yes. You should hit me because Yolovich is kind of growing on me. So I require a beating.
Kick us off with the news, please.
From Kotaku.com, it's been a minute since Sony's last State of Play showcase, and PlayStation fans have been hungry for new updates and big reveals on the PlayStation 5's future. What they got
sucks to be them.
What they got was not that. Resident Evil 4, Street Fighter 6, and more known quantities all got fresh trailers, while an extended gameplay demo for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League showed it may indeed be more of a live service game than a Batman Arkham successor. The only two games out of this whole showcase I found remotely interesting / weren't PSVR 2 games was Baldur's Gate 3, got its reveal trailer. The night is dark and full of mind flayers, and yes, they are coming to console. Baldur's Gate 3 The intricately detailed RPG from Larian Studio that feels like it's been in early access forever is coming to PS5 on August 31st. That's great news for anyone who didn't want to upgrade their PC to play the spiritual successor to two fantastic games, Baldur's Gate 2 and Divinity Original Sin 2. This looks really good visually speaking, but obviously this isn't gameplay or like even in-engine footage. It's just a trailer.
I was surprised at how good it looks. I thought there were some things that were in-game engine. It shows the yeah. Button prompts and menus and shit on screen all the time. It shows that stuff. And it shows characters interacting with the world and like throwing firebombs or whatever. And it looks really, really good. I'm kind of surprised. I was expecting like Divinity Original Sin 2, where it's like, yeah, it works, but it looks good. I'm curious to know how easy it'll be to jump into this as someone who hasn't touched Baldur's Gate 1 or 2, because those are some pretty old games. And I kind of want to get in on number 3, but I don't know anything about the story at all. So I'll keep my eyes on it. It looks good.
And Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. We finally got a real close look at Rocksteady's next game, complete with chaotic 4-player co-op and a mission that revolved around shooting giant purple pustules. With Harley Quinn and co bouncing around building tops in a giant sandbox, it looked like a cross between Crackdown 3 and Anthem. So it was about 15 minutes in.
Exactly the feeling I got. It was like everybody fly in circles and shoot the thing until it dies. And it was like, ew.
Yeah, it was about 15 minutes of gameplay. I will admit the cutscenes do look very good. Just like quality wise and what's the word? Fidelity wise. They look pretty solid and the voice cast seems pretty good. I don't despise the gameplay design in and of itself. Obviously, I would prefer more on the Crackdown side of those two because I don't mind Crackdown. It's an interesting game series when it works. But the thing that really threw me, which was expected but is now like very confirmed, is this has like a season pass slash thing, the stupid thing, the
Fortnite V-Bucks.
Yeah. The stupid, oh my gosh, where's my brain going?
English and words and shit.
It's the thing that replaced season passes. It was the thing after that. It's
loot
like
boxes?
No, after loot boxes, most games have them now.
Card packs.
No, those are just loot boxes.
I know.
It's a live service game thing. It's what Halo has. Holy shit, I'm dumb.
Quests.
It's like an event pass type thing, but it's bigger. The
seasons.
Whatever. I don't even know. Whatever. They switched over to a
seasonal events.
The live service elements look like dog shit. One, because it has the same generic user interface that every game post Destiny 2 has, with like a cursor on screen controlled by the thumbstick, and you can control your shaders and shit. It looks like ass, and it's expensive. There's way too much crap to buy. I think I've said this every single time that we bring up one of the two games, but I'm going to say it again. Gotham Knights and Kill the Justice League are backwards. Kill the Justice League looks like it could have worked, but it makes no sense that it's set in the Arkham universe after Arkham Knight. And Gotham Knights basically works off of Arkham Knight's like ending premise, but it's not in continuity. And they just seem backwards, and it really, really fucking bothers me.
They both look dumb and gay.
I don't know, man. Gotham Knights is looking better by the day, especially after a couple of people's reviews got kind of won me over. I know I won't hate it, and not hating it is kind of a high bar for games for me. So, anywho,
from CBR.com, Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League, the upcoming video game from Rocksteady Studios that we just talked about, blah, 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 receives a comic book prequel tie-in this May. Dubbed Suicide Squad: Kill Arkham Asylum, the 5-issue limited series delves into the origin behind the game's iteration of Task Force X, explaining how Harley Quinn, Captain Boomerang, King Shark, and Deadshot came together before they were assigned to battle the Justice League. Amanda Waller has taken control of the recently rebuilt Arkham Asylum, and her brutal tactics and merciless methods have led to the most secure facility Gotham City has ever seen. DC's description of the series reads, but remember that this is Amanda Waller, and she's always got an angle. Arkham is part of her latest recruitment drive, and she's looking for the strongest, smartest, and most brutal inmates in the asylum to serve her as new members of Task Force X. The series is penned by John Layman, known for Batman Eternal, Detective Comics, and 2, and illustrated by Jesus Hervé or Herbus, known for Are You Afraid of Darkseid? Each print issue of Suicide Squad: Kill Arkham Asylum comes with a digital code for a free in-game cosmetic item. These codes will also be presented to annual and ultra subscribers to DC Universe Infinite, DC's comic book subscription service. This is normal. I don't expect it to add very much detail besides what you can read in any other Suicide Squad run.
Yeah, probably. I do agree. I'm going to pick up when we eventually get to Gotham Knights, I'm going to pick up that prequel series. I haven't heard anything about it, positive or negative, so I'm just kind of curious. I have a weird soft spot for like prequel tie-in books that mean nothing. I don't know why. It might shed some light on how the fuck this makes any sense post Arkham Knight. So maybe. It's cool that they're including cosmetic codes. They did that with the Batman Fortnite book as well. Like, that's a good way to get kids to pick up comic books, is be like, hey kid, I know you play that game. Do you want the pretty golden gun skin? Here, buy the book. And then they might read it.
Yeah.
From Kotaku.com, Microsoft's president and vice chairman Brad Smith announced that the company signed a 10-year contract to bring Xbox games to Nintendo consoles. Smith took to Twitter to announce the binding contract, promising to drop Xbox games and Activision titles like Call of Duty on Netflix hardware at the same time these games...
Whoa. You said on Netflix hardware.
Oh my gosh. On Nintendo hardware at the same time these games hit Xbox consoles. The news comes as Microsoft's roughly $69 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard is put under the magnifying glass by nearly every regulator imaginable. Microsoft and Nintendo have now negotiated and signed a binding 10-year legal agreement to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo players the same day as Xbox, with full feature and content parity so they can experience Call of Duty just as Xbox and PlayStation gamers enjoy Call of Duty, the statement reads. We are committed to providing long-term equal access to Call of Duty to other gaming platforms, bringing more choice to more players and more competition to the gaming market. This seems pretty standard.
While that seems like a good idea, that seems to my uneducated brain to be like it'll extend the creative process or the development process for Call of Duty, because they have to program it to run on more systems, which a lot of other games do. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's going to make you're probably not going to get yearly releases of Call of Duty, which is a good thing.
We already aren't getting.
I know. Yeah,
they just changed out from that.
but it's going to be difficult to go back to that if they want to, because now they have to include everybody in the process instead of just PC, Xbox, PlayStation. Also, I'm concerned about stability of the game and how it's going to run, because I heard pretty rough things about Doom and Doom Eternal about frame rate and visuals, like how good it looks. It's clearly downgraded. Same with like Witcher 3, or big games, big AAA games are clearly downgraded when they're put on the Switch, or most of them anyway. And the
Yeah,
Nintendo Switch runs on Wi-Fi for the most part, unless you plug it into the hub or dock or whatever, where it has an Ethernet cord. So all those things make me go, okay, I'm interested, but that's going to be rough.
honestly, let Call of Duty suffer the consequences for its actions. That's fine for me. I think this is more future proofing than for the Switch in and of itself, because I think most Nintendo people have been waiting for a new console for a while. The Switch Pro or Mini or whatever the hell it is was released like 3 years ago now, and most people don't seem to like it. So the Switch has been out for nearly 7 years. I think it's about 7 years now. So I think it's due for a new version of like that type of console. So I think this is more so what's going to come down the pipeline on the next console, which I'm assuming will be beefed up to some extent, will be able to run this, because I don't think this is going to apply to whatever game Call of Duty's putting out. I think this year, I think this year they have a game, and then next year they're skipping or whatever. I don't remember which year the gap year is starting, but I think the next game isn't going to apply to this. It'll be the one following with a new development cycle.
I hadn't thought of that.
Just a gut feeling.
From Kotaku.com, after years of waiting, Nintendo finally pulled back the curtain a little more on what fans can expect from The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. A snazzy new gameplay trailer revealed a ton, including a world that's more than just a reskin of the one from Breath of the Wild. Previous trailers made it clear that Link will be taking to the skies in much of Tears of the Kingdom, both in terms of teleporting up to floating islands and making use of a new glider to cover longer distances or long distances. The Hero of Time also sports a new magic glove, not the power glove, this time around, which augments some of the physics-based abilities from the first game and even includes a flamethrower mode. I wish my power glove had a flamethrower.
I'm not like hyped on this because I still don't have a Switch because I'm not that into it, but I'm glad that it's a full iteration on top of Breath of the Wild, especially with such a long wait, instead of it just being the version 1.5 with like a new story. It seems like it's a whole new game.
While I see additions and improvements in the gameplay trailer, I'm gonna pull a wild call in and be like, I don't give a shit. I was not a fan of Breath of the Wild at all. And it looks very similar to a brain that didn't like the first one. So
I think that's your hottest take ever, honestly.
Oh, I am well aware of that. I tell a lot of people my hottest video game take is that I hate Breath of the Wild.
Wow, you're so cool.
And a lot of people agree. Like, yeah, you're dumb and gay. And I go, I know.
Fair.
It's true.
From PCGamer.com, during IGN FanFest, Lies of P, the Bloodborne-esque Souls-like reimagining of The Adventures of Pinocchio being made by Round 8, got a new trailer and release window of August 2023. That put Lies of P up against two RPGs. Larian Studios' Baldur's Gate 3 is scheduled to leave early access in the same month, and Sea of Stars, a retro Nintendo-style prequel to The Messenger, is due in August as well.
That's pretty big. The Messenger was pretty popular for a hot minute.
One thing we do know is that telling lies will be important. Inverting the original story's message, a tagline for Lies of P declares, "You must always lie to others if you hope to become human." The way you lie can apparently differ, with interconnected procedural quests that play out depending on how you lie. In classic video game choice and consequence fashion, which fibs you decide to tell will help determine which ending you get. With being a living doll, P is able to swap parts of his body in and out to change up his skill set. Weapons can also be combined to make new ones, with research required to find the best combos. I'm so glad that I found this like a few months back, because this is looking really good.
It's a really, really weird concept. And I was like, I don't know. And then I saw the trailer for it. And I was like, yep, I'm in. This looks good. It's really weird. I hope it works.
He tell good fibber.
Let me Pinocchio.
No.
I'm sure you've seen that.
I'm wearing ladies' underwear.
From PCGamer.com, Blumhouse, the production studio behind legendary films like Get Out, Mithrigan or Megan, and Tooth Fairy starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, is getting into video games. The company's new division. What?
I love
the fact that they're trying to say Megan is a legendary film. Get the heck out of here.
I think it's clearly a joke.
Well, they start out strong with Get Out, and then they lose their way.
And then they mentioned Tooth Fairy starring The Rock.
I guess you can make the argument that's a legendary film.
Sure.
Anyway, Blumhouse Games will, quote, partner with independent game developers to bring their creative vision to life via original horror-themed games, end quote. The new games division will focus on indie budget titles, which translates to games with a budget under $10 million, in keeping with the spirit of its film business. The company has named Zach Wood, who has games like Hohokum, Twisted Metal, and Prey Mooncrash under his belt, as president, and ex-Sony finance and operations executive Don Seckler as CFO. Everyone involved has put out statements saying their various flavors of thrilled and excited to be part of the new division, circle jerking the boss, which I'll spare you. But it is interesting how much the people involved are emphasizing the horror themed of their upcoming gaming projects, alongside Blumhouse's statement about original horror themed games mentioned earlier. Wood mentioned the unique opportunity for horror and genre in the indie game space in his own statement. To its credit, Blumhouse seems to have a pretty clear idea of what it wants to do with its new division. Do you think, Spencer, that we will get a Fantasy Island video game crossover title?
No.
Good, because that movie was terrible.
I don't have any real thoughts on this, to be honest. It doesn't seem like a bad thing, but Blumhouse has been dipping in quality for the past few years as they get bigger. Their philosophy has stayed the same, but a lot of their I mean, this happens with DreamWorks recently as well. They have a new like studio intro to their movies, and the Blumhouse one went from being a nice little quaint normal, hey, we worked on this thing, to like a 10-second long jerk off of all the different IPs that they own. And that's the same.
Literally the Marvel of horror movies.
Yeah, and when DreamWorks did that, I got really butthurt because I think that's gross. And I think Blumhouse's original philosophy, trying to sell itself on like, we just make movies for cheap and maybe they're good and maybe they're not. Trying to sell itself on the IPs that it's worked on is kind of lame, even if the way they make their movies has stayed the same. So like, cool, they're making games now. Okay. From
Yeah,
Kotaku.
I don't really care as long as hopefully something good will come out of it. The horror game genre is kind of slim. It feels like it used to be much, much bigger. So hopefully they do something cool.
From Kotaku.com, Nintendo announced a 20% Switch sales drop in its latest financial report, but still plans to institute a 10% pay raise, the company told investors a couple weeks ago. While it's unclear if the hike will trickle down to temporary contractors at the Mario Maker's North American headquarters, some say they have already seen substantial raises over the last couple of months. It's important to our long-term growth to secure our workforce, Nintendo President Shuntaro Furukawa said during the company's earnings report, according to Reuters. The news comes after Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida recently called on companies to pay workers more after inflation hit its highest point in the country since 1981. Wins all around. Switch sales are holy fucking words. Switch sales are dying, so win for Xbox, and also paying people money is good, in fact.
That's kind of funny because a couple people on my trip have been looking for Switches to buy. So weird. This is a long one. I'm going to try to speed through. From Kotaku.com, Activision Blizzard will pay the Securities Exchange Commission $35 million to settle charges that it violated workplace misconduct reporting rules and whistleblower protections. The Call of Duty publisher admits no wrongdoing in the case, which comes less than 2 years after a bombshell lawsuit by California regulators alleged years of sexual harassment and discrimination at the company that we covered when we started 2 years ago. Today's SEC order states that Activision Blizzard lacked controls and procedures to properly collect and analyze employee complaints of workplace misconduct. As a result, the company's management lacked sufficient information to even know if there were certain issues at the company that required public disclosures to investors. In addition, the SEC order also claims Activision Blizzard used separation agreements for departing employees that required them to notify the company if they were contacted for information by the SEC, which would be a violation of whistleblower protections. The SEC's order finds that Activision Blizzard failed to implement necessary controls to collect and review employee complaints about workplace misconduct, which left it without the means to determine whether larger issues existed that needed to be disclosed to investors. Director of the SEC's Denver Regional Office, Jason Burke, said in a press release. While the company didn't admit to the charges, it did agree to a cease and desist order in addition to the $35 million penalty. We are pleased to have amicably resolved this matter, Activision Media Relations VP Joe Christinat told Kotaku in a statement. My job is so much easier now that this shitstorm is finally blowing over, is probably what he meant by that. As our order recognizes, we have enhanced our disclosure processes with regard to workplace reporting and updated our separation contract language. We did so as part of our continuing commitment to operational excellence and transparency. Activision Blizzard is confident in its workplace disclosures. We got spanked and we're trying to recover publicly.
Yeah, accurate. Yeah, I always love it when this is the equivalent of like settling out of court with like a private lawsuit. It's like you saying you did nothing wrong, but you will pay a lot of money to get people to shut the fuck up about it. Huh? That's nice. I like that. At least there's something coming out of this. Like, despite the sheer amount of stuff from Activision Blizzard over the past year or so that's come out, I think the whistleblower protections and like HR miscommunications and like that sort of information not being properly private is probably the biggest issue, like structurally speaking, because all the other issues kind of flow out of that. If you can't report problems correctly or when problems are reported, people know who reported problems and so on, then like everything else is going to get worse. From PCGamer.com, Mick Gordon, the composer on games like 2017's Prey, the Doom reboots, and the new Wolfenstein games, has been hard at work on an upcoming BioShock-like Atomic Heart, but he's not keeping the money for it. In a post to Twitter, the veteran video game musician announced he's going to donate his fee for the game to the Australian Red Cross Ukraine Crisis Appeal in order to use his work as a means to help those affected by the conflict that began when Russia invaded Ukraine almost a year ago, which is it's a year now. Atomic Heart is being developed by Mundfish, a Russian studio, but Gordon's donation isn't intended as a disavowal of either the game or its developer, which Gordon praised highly for its commitment to imagination and artistic freedom. The artist says he's excited to hear his musical contributions come to life when the game comes out. Gordon reserves his ire for the Russian government alone, saying this invasion was not a decision of the Russian people, but rather an authoritarian regime that disregards human rights and dignity. As usual, Mick Gordon being based as usual.
This is amazing because his last press release back in October.
Like 2 months. I think it was a little bit after that. It was like 2 months ago.
Was like, yeah, I haven't been paid for Doom Eternal like at all, and I wasn't making ends meet with my family. So the ball's on him to not have money and then donate his next paycheck. Also, his reputation was wrecked because of Doom Eternal. He gets a new job in the career path that he probably wants to be in, and he donates his fee. Like, this is crazy. This is nuts.
That was basically what I had, was like the fact that he didn't get paid correctly for his last job. To be fair, I would be willing to bet that this is going to be like a 95% donation. Like, I'm sure he's going to like pay his mortgage, you know, but like I think this is good, and I'm glad he's being public about it. I know a lot of people, mostly idiots, get really butthurt when people do good things, and they always say that everyone's like virtue signaling because they're retarded. This is cool and good. Atomic Heart does look very interesting. I don't think it's been reviewing very great. I'm going to pick it up at some point, but it's cool that he's making a clear distinction between the Russian government and like the people he worked with. He's using his clout to push money in a good cause. So that's cool.
It's more the Kanye donated $500,000 to I don't know, Make-A-Wish, and it's like Kanye sleeps on a mountain of money, and 500,000 is nothing. That something so small for someone so popular feels like signaling. So I can see both sides of the argument.
Mick Gordon continues to be the best human.
Yes.
And that one Twitter interaction I had with him continues to still feel really weird.
From PCGamer.com, in news that possibly everyone saw coming, The Wolf Among Us 2 has been delayed beyond this year. In a post to Twitter, the newly revived, minus most of its original staff, Telltale Games announced that it had made the difficult decision to delay The Wolf Among Us 2 out of 2023. But given that it's been nearly a decade since the last episode of the first series released, I can probably stand to wait a little longer. Telltale says the delay is about protecting the health of its team, and in a chat with IGN, studio boss Jamie or Jaime Ottili said it was about avoiding crunch. Burning people out or grinding them down is the wrong thing to do long term, said Ottili. As an industry, if we're going to continue to grow, we have to stop it. We just have to stop doing it and make better choices. The only alternative to either delaying the game or crunching would have been shipping an unfinished game, which the studio apparently refuses to do. If we put this game out and it's not ready, we're going to get torn to shreds, said Ottili. The Wolf Among Us 2 was announced early in its development cycle in 2019, while Telltale was still staffing up for full production, and it's been hindered by all the stuff you'd expect. The coronas and the tight labor market that followed it, but it's also been impacted by a decision to switch the game from Unreal Engine 4 to 5. Audley says the change has been worth it, but it's meant redoing work that was already done for the Unreal Engine 4 version of the game.
The same thing I say every time that a game gets delayed. This is good, but I think this is doubly good in Telltale's case because Telltale is known for releasing busted games as is, and switching to Unreal Engine 5 is a very big step up for them. So this is pretty cool.
And this is the new term of their new ownership or whatever. So
yeah, they're basically, I think they're funded by Skybox now, is how that ended up happening, I think.
They kind of have to make a good impression on their first game under new management. So
makes sense. It's cool.
Yes,
good.
Very good.
It's going to be so pretty. From PCGamer.com, Luminous Productions, the team behind this year's powerfully middling Forspoken, is going quietly into that good night. In a tweet, the studio announced that beginning on May 1st, it would join Square Enix to deliver new innovative gaming experiences across the globe. In other words, it's being folded into its parent company and ceasing to exist as a separate entity. In the 2 months between now and May 1st, Luminous says it'll be entirely focused on Forspoken, and that it's currently working on the previously announced patch to address overall game performance. Given that some of Forspoken's previous patches really didn't do much to optimize the game for some players, we'd better hope this last one is a doozy. The studio also said that Forspoken's upcoming DLC, In Tanta We Trust, remains on track for release this summer. For obvious reasons, Luminous tries to present this as a positive move for the company, but there's a trace of something. Holy shit, I've never seen this word before. What is this?
Me either. No idea.
What's this word mean? It's a British word.
Give me synonyms, but don't use the British word.
Tell me how to pronounce it.
Elegiac.
It's an adjective of being like an elegy. Hold on. I hate having my microphone plugged in because then the audio on my computer doesn't like working.
Elegious?
Maybe. I don't know. But there's a trace of something sad in its released statement. When Luminous was established, the announcement reads, its vision was to make AAA games that fuse technology and artistry to deliver completely new play experiences. Having the chance to do just that has been a dream come true. The company probably won't get the chance to try its hand at a Forspoken 2 for a long time, if ever. Yeah, this was a kind of expected because Forspoken looks to be pretty ass, but it at least sounds like that they're not like laying off everybody, so that's a good thing. They're just not letting the studio continue.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say that Forspoken looks like ass, and it had really, really bad timing because it's a game about casting magic spells and beating up monsters and doing adventures and stuff right before a Harry Potter game came out that actually looks pretty good and runs well and people like. So big oof. There's really nothing much more to say about that. Like, Harry Potter game looks better than unknown Forspoken PlayStation exclusive game. It just runs better and looks better.
I think the thing for me with Forspoken that really was annoying was the dialogue. It was just every three. It's what people's fictitious memeified version of what they think a Marvel movie is like in their heads. You know, it's like, okay, Marvel movies aren't actually that bad, but like that's what it feels like. Is it's got that overly he's right behind me, isn't he? Type bullshit to it. Yeah.
Last one from Kotaku.com. Dead by Daylight is getting the video game adaptation treatment. Atomic Monster, Aquaman director James Wan's production company, and Blumhouse, the famed horror production company behind Mithrigan or Megan and Get Out and Blumhouse Games now, announced on March 2nd that they are working with Behavior Interactive on a feature film of Dead by Daylight.
I don't care because this series doesn't have story to it. It's just like zombies and shit.
It's literally Friday the 13th.
Yeah. Great.
And then Friday the 13th made their own game.
Yes, which
and it didn't do as well as Dead by Daylight.
Which is so bad because like that game was actually pretty solid, but you have to play online and it's hard to get people to play it anymore.
I'm talking about the Super Nintendo version.
Oh, sure you are. So I played a game this month. I played Quantum Break, which has been on my to-do list since it released. It came out in 2016. It's a sci-fi action-adventure third-person shooter, which was developed by Remedy Entertainment and published by Microsoft Studios. So it is a Xbox/Windows exclusive. The game centers on Jack Joyce, who was granted time manipulation powers after a failed time machine experiment, who then comes into conflict with former friend Paul Serene over how to deal with an apocalyptic end of time. And that end of time is, in fact, literal. It also includes platforming and junction points at certain spots in the game, which are forks, point of no return type of stuff. It also features episodes of an integrated live action television show featuring the actors that portray the characters in the game. The TV show episodes are unique depending upon some choices that you make in the game. There are little extended segments that you get by finding certain unlockables within the game. So this was originally envisioned to be a sequel to Alan Wake, which was Remedy's last game. Jacob talked about the remastered version a few months ago. So that game was very focused on its thematic and like narrative structure. And they wanted to advance that with a time travel narrative, but they decided to make a whole new IP, and that's where Microsoft Studios got involved for the funding. This is a extremely high budget production, especially from a smaller studio. Jacob, are you familiar with the trope in fiction of Born Beautiful Yesterday? Maybe, kind of, sort of.
So like the washed up, ruggedly handsome detective that got busted for a crime he didn't commit, and now he's just a freaking private investigator?
Not at all. So Born Beautiful Yesterday is basically when a character, it's always a woman, is whether literally or metaphorically born yesterday. So they're portrayed as being like immature and vulnerable and naive, but they're also like hot as ever, loving shit, and the main character is just trying to bone them the whole time. It's not a good trope. It's just used very commonly. So say Clockwork Orange is a pretty good example of that.
I haven't seen it.
Okay, well, it's something that pops up, and it's bad. There is a similar trope that's less problematic, and it's the flip side of that, which is what this game is. And it's Born a Superhero Tomorrow, and it's something I'm dubbing because I think it's cool. It is a type, this happens a lot in, I think, like middle-aged dad fiction. It's the I'm a normal guy who has average skills and is like moderately good looking, but by the end of this story, I'm going to be a god. And that's kind of what happens with this. So Jack Joyce is like your normal dude. He's like in his early 30s. He's vaguely attractive, and he's just a normal guy. He's kind of nice. He has very little backstory. But over the course of the game, he ends up going like God mode. The developers have described this game as like a superhero origin story of sorts, and I think that definitely shows. So just to run through the actors real quick. So this is like a very motion capture heavy game for not just the in-game models, but the cutscenes as well. And then obviously like the television episodes. So Sean Ashmore plays the pro tag Jack Joyce. Aidan Gillen, who you would probably know as Littlefinger from Game of Thrones, plays the antagonist Paul Serene, who is one of Jack's like high school / college best friends. And Dominic Monaghan plays William Joyce, Jack's older brother, who was also friends with Paul. And Lance Reddick plays Martin Hatch, who is kind of the secondary antagonist. That's a very complicated thing. There's also Patrick Heisinger as Liam Burke, who is the head of security staff for the antagonist company Monarch, and a bunch of other people. It's got a pretty large cast, to be honest. Basically, you are invited to a super secret science experiment early in the morning by your old bestie, and he's like, just come here, it'll be fine. I'll show you what I'm working on. And then you do time travel, and shit goes fucking crazy immediately. This game includes, I think, round about 4 timelines running kind of concurrently. It's very confusing. This game also, it works a lot more on like the vibe. Like if you think about it too hard, it'll hurt your head, even if it like does make sense. Just kind of run with it. The whole game takes place within about a 24-hour period from Jack's perspective, but for other characters, some of them have lived multiple lifetimes. Some of them come back from the dead effectively. There's a lot of stuff that happens. You are trying to prevent the end of the world from happening. And by the end of the world, it's the end of time. Like time in and of itself will unravel. There's a time bomb that goes off, basically. And that's the setting for the gameplay as well as the story and like all of its themes and messaging and whatnot. There's a lot of plot to go through, so I'm not going to. There's actually a lot of stuff which I don't necessarily think they're spoilers, but I think it does work pretty well not knowing anything going into it, so things have a lot more impact. You become like an overnight terrorist to people because of your involvement and the media's interaction with public incidents, let's say, as well as the bad company Monarch, who's headed up, it turns out, by your best friend Paul, but Paul from the past, but from the future, because he's seen the end of time. So he went back in time to prevent it by starting a company to make new technology, and so on and so on. That's how all of the plots weave together, is like every character has different character models that are clearly different ages, and you kind of have to parse out which one is doing what when, which I think is
the classic. It's the classic problem with Terminator is like John Connor wouldn't exist if he hadn't gone back in time and banged what's her face? It's
yes.
Yeah. It's a paradox, so it doesn't work.
Despite it having kind of a vibes based function, I guess, through the game itself, apparently had a lot of research done in terms of like the science of how this could potentially work. So it, on the back end, it's written really detailed. So yeah, it's a very high concept science fiction. Can you change your fate? Can you undo things that have already been done? Does it matter? Etc. Etc. Most of the game works towards that theme more than anything else. And I think that's kind of the game's strong point, is it has a very strong feeling to it. Some of its presentation can be a little generic, especially for the mid 2010s, like action movie aesthetic and whatnot. But I think it kind of undersells the game for what it actually has going on under the hood, like technologically speaking, as well as story wise. I think it's really easy to underestimate the game. Performances for the motion capture and voice work is phenomenal across the board. The budget really went into getting high profile actors for this, and I think it worked really well. The television segments it's not a companion television show. It's like literally you can't. It's like half of the plot is divulged to you through the show. It focuses on side characters, so little details you'll notice in the gameplay or during the cutscenes will be relevant in the TV show. It'll be like, oh, that's how that person got to this location or whatever. So it primarily focuses on people you would consider on the antagonist team, and it works on humanizing them, which I think it does fairly well in the end. In terms of how the TV show actually is, like quality wise, it's like high end network TV. It's not like streaming service levels of quality, but it's not bad by any means. It's serviceable. The performances are really good. It has the same writing quality as most of the game. The technical aspects of the writing, like structure and detail work and callbacks, are phenomenal. But a lot of the dialogue is really rough, just across the board. There's a lot of like, you're going to need to kill me once and for all. And it's like, kill yourself. Just, it's got a lot of really mediocre dialogue. The actors sell it, but man, sometimes it can be a lot of rough lines back to back. So the general presentation of trying to blur the lines, I guess, between game and TV didn't work at all. It was too early for this, technologically speaking. I think it was a really cool idea, and I appreciated playing it and watching it together. But I really think that the fact that it includes 4 episodes of about 30 minutes of TV that you kind of have to watch at the end of each act of the story to get it, it's just, it didn't work for what they wanted. I think it more so demonstrates that you could have just done it with motion capture cutscenes, because the cutscenes that they have for this game they've aged flawlessly. They're insanely impressive to this day, and they're 6 years old. It's nuts. So the cutscenes are phenomenal, and the TV hasn't aged that great. So it's just kind of a weird experiment they tried that I don't really think panned out, but I commend them for trying.
I want to say it released like super broken too, like the game, and they had to patch it with huge patches later, if I remember right.
I heard stuff about that. I think it was primarily the PC version was really busted on launch. But it was definitely fixed pretty early because the review scores are really solid, and those don't get updated after like the first year of release. So it reviewed pretty well. I think it was like the opening. It had a really big day one patch type deal. General presentation is very solid. The soundtrack is really good. It's sometimes overpowered by a lot of sound effects, not by the sound mixing, but like when your powers activate, you will start hearing noises, and it just kind of muddies the mix. The user interface is very good and clean, simple to use. It's not clunky or overly complex. And the act structures make the game very easy to follow despite its convoluted storyline. Technologically speaking, the game ran well for me. I'm playing on the Xbox Series X console. I had one really large stutter that nearly killed the game in the last 20% of it. I guess just too much shit loaded in at once, because there are things in the game called stutters where time freezes and the game gets kind of weird. But this was like a real stutter. Like the game just stopped for a good 2 minutes and then kicked back in. So that was
sounds like a meta joke on you, but whatever.
Yeah, I really don't think so. Other than I couldn't access my Xbox's home menu. So,
I don't know, man. Sounds like the Red Ring of Death fake out in Arkham Asylum.
Other than that, technologically speaking, I'm really impressed with how well this holds up. This began production during the cusp of that previous generation pushing into 1080p category. From like the base game would always be 720p, but they would aim for 1080 if possible. And this thing looks like it could have released like last year. It looks better than most games coming out now, other than some elements here and there. The level of fidelity on the cutscenes, like I said, we're talking like Blur's Halo cutscenes level of quality. It's insane. The gameplay looks very good in terms of visuals, stuttering. Particle effects are a really big part of this game because of time slowing down and starting up constantly. Bullets will just sit in the air for like a minute or two at a time. And the amount of individual items this game has to keep track of all at once and not slow down or get like slogged on is really impressive. Just the type of way that the game plays, as with your powers starting and stopping and kicking in, and all the different, you'll have 10 people in a room all activating different time powers that are doing different things while the world is frozen, and it all runs smoothly and coherently is really, really impressive. Most games can't pull anything like that off at all. The textures are extremely high resolution, and the models are fairly high in terms of their
polygons.
Thank you. Many polygons, particularly for a game that started production in 2013. It might be because the entire environment will get flipped upside down and shaken around like a snow globe at any moment. Everything is really detailed. There's very few copy pasted assets, which is quite impressive for the size of the game. The big highlight, I think, here that makes the gameplay hold up so well in terms of visuals is the lighting engine. Apparently, they had to rework part of the Northlight engine, which is what this runs on. It's basically just Remedy's in-house engine. They had to do a new version of like non-specific lighting. So how the world is illuminated, but not from an actual light source. And it really shows because the game looks very good. With my very low technical knowledge, but like desire to appreciate artistry, it seems like whenever a game looks good, it's either high polygons, high resolution models, or like a really good lighting engine. I think the lighting engine does it here because you'll have so many different colors of lighting from different areas. You'll have different types of diffusion. It actually feels like real lighting. You have harsh white lights, soft orange lights. You have like neon and LED greens and blues and whatnot. It's intense. And I think that really, really, really pushes it to be that level of really uncanny valley sometimes. There are two qualms I have with its visuals. One is my greatest enemy. It's motion smoothing. Everything in this game has motion smoothing on it, and it takes a while to get used to. I get why they would want motion smoothing on this, at least to some extent, but when getting used to the playing as the third person character model for the first couple of hours, it really takes getting used to like not feeling tripped out by how much motion smoothing there is on your actions. Not a huge fan of that. Just it's a lot to take in. And there is a lot of pop in here. It actually happened more in the first half of the game than the second, despite the second half being a lot more like processor heavy. Just there's a lot more going on. I'm not sure why that happened like that, but there is definitely pop in problems. It's just not egregious. It's here and there. It'll like a certain area will be pretty bad. And I can put up with that. It's fine. Gameplay wise, in and of itself, the actual gameplay is pretty standard Remedy style third person shooting. The shooting mechanics in and of themselves are fine. They're passable. They're nothing spectacular. It's a little clunky movement wise, like moving your character with the left stick is just a little imprecise. I think the time powers really help make up for the clunkiness of the shooting because you can speed up, slow down around people. You can slow down time to aim your shots, etc., etc. So it works in tandem together. I'm not sure if that's a sacrifice that they made to be able to have so many powers in your wheelhouse or not. But it kind of feels like that. There's about 10 weapons in total. Most of them are just subtypes. It's handgun, shotgun, carbine rifle, assault rifle, and SMG. There's also an LMG. And then everything else is kind of just a variant of that. It makes it easier to focus on the gameplay in and of itself instead of looking for stat boosts on your weapons. It just feels like you pick up what's around you and you can make it work. And I like that style of gunplay in my third-person shooters. I can't explain why. I just like focusing on the actual shooting and the fun of it rather than the like stat boosting. The guns all feel fine. None of them are particularly more or less fun than any of the other ones, and that's fine. I don't really have a qualm with that. The sound effects for said guns are very good. They shoot well. They all have purposes in the field. The platforming is bad. There's a lot of platforming in this game. Most of it is linear as fuck, and that's kind of the problem. It's just, despite the game wanting you to think there are so many unlimited options and so much potential because of your powers and what you could do with them in theory, most of the platforming sections are just really obvious where you're supposed to go. The actual climbing like animations are really, really janky. It's like, it reminded me of playing Watch Dogs. Like, they're there and you have to use them, but they're not fun. They could be worse. And that's about it. It just enables you to climb over boxes and fences. And as the normal guy protagonist, it makes sense. I'm not expecting like Assassin's Creed parkour in this game. So it's fine, but it does get agitating at points. When it comes to puzzles, most of them are really well disguised QuickTime events. It'll consist of you rewinding or forwarding time or stopping time to, say, prop open a door or zoom into a door before it closes, stuff like that. It's all pretty straightforward. I wasn't confused or overwhelmed by any of it, but it's fine. It's fun. It's cute, if nothing else. It's got its charm to it. The thing here that's really the seller, I think, especially for me, is the story. And it's kind of a mixed bag. I think the story, if you lay it all out on a table, is top tier science fiction. But I think the way that they present it, or the storytelling in and of itself, is not great. And I think a lot of it is the formatting between the television episodes, the animation, the animated cutscenes, the gameplay, and all of the in-game collectibles. Effectively, you have computer notes, sticky notes, emails, texts, etc., like radio reports, and I love all of that sort of stuff. I think this game finds a good way to use those additional storytelling elements, whereas it adds to the story. It's not required. And there's just a lot of them, but it doesn't make you feel bad for not looking at them. You know, like there's just a billboard in like a corkboard in the room. You should go read it and see what's on it. But if you don't, it's fine. But I think it really does add to it like a lot to understand the full picture of what's going on, how many people are involved, what the timelines look like, how events line up. I think that's really cool. But I think that so much of it was disseminated to the player through skippable notes and stuff, as well as really a really bad framing device of the whole game taking place through an interview that takes place after the events of the game. So there's constant voiceover. It was a really bad decision. It's very intrusive and unnecessary. It doesn't come together the way that it wants to. And I think that's more disappointing than it is frustrating. It's just kind of sad because the quality is definitely there. The game wants you to question all of the characters and why they're doing what they're doing. Everyone has ulterior motives. It wants you to think about how those relations all work together. The choices you make during basically the end of each act will have you play as the antagonist for a junction point where you can say, it'll make you choose between two characters that are on your side, but you have to pick which one is the traitor. And then the game will change based on that. Stuff like that I think is really cool. It just doesn't come together as much. It's not as cohesive playing from start to finish as it should be, or as it could be. On top of the collectibles, there's also collectible, basically XP points. They're called Chronon sources or whatever. It's like magical time juice that you find in the world because of the time bomb going off. It upgrades your different powers. It's nothing exciting. It works fine. It's not overwhelming. There's 60 of them in total spread throughout about the whole game. It's all doable. I got all of them on my first playthrough. It just makes playing the game a little easier. And I like that it's not an overwhelming skill tree. So on the whole, it's a very high-minded game that pushes the technology in a really interesting direction, especially for the time. But it does underestimate what the technology can do. Because I think this game, the way that they probably thought they could do it originally, is doable with the technology they used. And that's hindsight, you know? I don't think there was some critical error in their thinking. It's just they aimed for the stars, but they felt the need to add guardrails, if that makes sense. Whereas I don't think it was necessary to add guardrails. They could have just taken their hands off the wheel and just fucking gone for it, and they don't. But the potential was definitely there. It's really fun on the whole. It gives you strong moments, but when the game is over, I didn't have a strong feeling other than I have feelings. And I think that's kind of sad because it does end on like a big moment. It's a kind of cliffhanger sequel bait ending. And I was like, I would play that, but I'm more so thinking about the rest of the game. It ends on kind of a profound, not to spoil it exactly, but like now that the game is over, the villain has been defeated, etc., you have an injunction point as the protagonist. And the point is, wow, look, perspective, you could be the bad guy, like all of that sort of stuff. It's asking you to question your own motives and why you played the way that you played. And I think that's cool. It could definitely come across as like cheap sequel bait. That's like, oh, are you the bad guy now? And it's like, that's clearly not it, but I think that's what most people took from it. There were rumors of a sequel for a while. It did not materialize. I think that has more to do with Xbox Game Studios than it does Remedy. Because in the end, the game sold very well. And it was reviewed pretty well across the board. But I just don't think it made enough money for Xbox. It did not become a new Gears of War or Halo. So Remedy went back to the drawing board, and then they made their next game, Control, which works off of a very similar concept and sounds like is a lot better without a lot of the additional jank that this game had by kind of marketing itself like a big blockbuster action movie. And that's probably for the best. It's a really cool idea that didn't 100% pan out.
What price did you spend for Quantum Break?
Ooh, last thing before I tell you the price. The story would have taken roughly 10 to 12 hours to complete if I wasn't aiming for all the collectibles. I hit about 20 hours. I think it might have been up to 22, and I got nearly 100% completion on normal difficulty. I bought this for, I believe, $20 or $25. I think I got it off of Amazon brand new. And it was definitely worth that for sure.
You highly recommend or sort of recommend?
I would recommend it for anyone who likes Remedy games, or things like that. If you're a fan of third-person shooters, I'm not sure how much the gameplay will intrigue you because it wants to be more focused on the powers, and the shooting is mid. And the cover system, I didn't even mention, it's like a soft cover system. You kind of just automatically crouch when you're near a box, and there's no blind firing, which I really like because I hate cover systems with a burning passion. I think they're fucking stupid, but I get why people were frustrated. So if you like third-person shooters or you're into sci-fi, probably, I think you would at least find it interesting, and you wouldn't
I'm
hate
definitely interested.
It's definitely worth playing. I wouldn't like highly recommend it to anyone who ever wants to play a video game, but this is like, if I have to give it a number, just because that would be an easy example, it's like a 7.5 out of 10.
Perfect.
It's like it's very good, but it has a lot of very large flaws.
We have 2 patrons that have gone over to patreon.com/dimecomicbros and signed up under one of the 4 tiers
4
that we have available there. Jeff Lawrence and Caitlin, we appreciate your support. It helps us keep these shows, Dime Gaming Bros, and our weekly show, Dime Comic Bros, going continuously. Thank you to our friends over at Jetpack Comics and Games in downtown Rochester, New Hampshire. We are there all the time unless we are on road trips for work. And then we wish we were there, but we're stuck on the other side of the world. And it sucks because nobody replaces you. Please consider going to downtown Rochester, New Hampshire and checking out Jetpack Comics and Games. They have most things to satisfy your nerdy needs. Next month is probably going to be even less enthusiasm and intention from the both of us because life sucks. Just kidding. But also we don't know what we're talking about. So stay tuned. Check out our socials. Anything with the name of the show, you'll probably find us.
This is true.
It's pretty simple. Like and subscribe.
Smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Click the little bell notifications. You get notified when we upload new videos.
Spencer is practicing for the one day that we start streaming on YouTube Gaming.
You can also gift a sub on twitch.tv.
No, you can't. We're not there. Don't add us. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.